Welcome back to the Built Different podcast. I'm Stephen Pettigrew, business investor, dealmaker, and founder of the Built Different ecosystem. On this show, we dive into real conversations with entrepreneurs, operators, and people who've actually built something. No recycled theory from ChatGPT. Just straight, practical insights you can use to scale your business and upgrade your life. Let's go into it with today's guest. Colin, welcome to the Built Different podcast. Welcome to Dubai. How's your trip going so far, mate?
It's been great. And as I was saying, every time I come 2-3 times a year now for the last 3 years, it's like work, but with a nice bit of play, because you can feel like you're almost, and I think you and our mutual friend Stephen McKillop said this to me, every weekend like another holiday because you're out in this amazing environment. So I'll graft hard in the 2 weeks. I think I'll do 8 or 9 podcasts for Cambro, 2 or 3 as a guest. This one, Charlie Johnson's show, and one more we're talking to as well. So I feel like I get a really good grasp of what it would be like to live here, but I also feel like I'm getting the holiday element, the sun, the training in really cool environments, the social stuff. Like even Friday night there, I was out at 5 Lux for a DJ, Marco Crow, that I really enjoy. So I'm getting that nice balance of working really hard, but the activities I can do for fun here are so good compared to probably anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's better than Glasgow for a night out.
Just a little bit.
Colin, there's lots and lots of places where we could start. I mean, I've been following your work for a long time. Obviously, you helped me set up my podcast. I actually purchased your podcast masterclass a year or 2 ago. So you've got the podcast, your previous corporate life. You've been building a little coaching business, which has really kicked off, especially in the last couple of years. There's so many places we could start, but I'm going to ask you to kick off, why is the UK so fucked right now?
It doesn't make me happy to say this because I'm proudly Scottish, but I'm fiercely British. Like I'm very, very proud of my heritage and the culture that I come from. And watching the decline of somewhere that you love is far more painful than if I was ambivalent. And I think much of the problems and the ills that the UK face are self-inflicted. They're not problems of, oh, the world's changing so much. It's actually like self-destructive, self-harming policies. And much of that is what I would call the globalist, which is a leftist agenda where we have no control over immigration, we have no control over the welfare bill, we have a culture of punishing productive people in aiding unproductive people and like unwilling to be productive people, which I totally disagree with. Everyone knows that there should be a safety net and support for the poorest and the most challenged or those ill-fortunate in society, but that is now become more advantageous to be dependent on the state than it has to work a hard entry-level job. And that's completely wrong because I believe in social mobility, people going from zero to hero, or at least from the bottom to as close to the top as they can, or a level where they're proud for themselves and their family. So culturally in the UK, we have a massive problem with how we incentivize hard work, success, striving, and pushing for more. In fact, we actively are discouraging it from a policy perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, because you've got the likes of this Gary Economics cunt who's online shouting about tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, while not recognizing that fundamentally the UK is already a high tax environment. He's talking about a wealth tax. We already have wealth taxes. We have council tax, we have capital gains, and we have 2 or 3 other wealth taxes as well. And he wants this other wealth tax, which is even more punitive. There are definitely things we can do to tax bigger corporations more, maybe large landowners more with unproductive assets. But fundamentally, if you're a PAYE employer, a small business owner, a consultant, a coach like you and I fall into, the UK is punishing you for wanting to do more and wanting to excel and wanting to push on. And that is a very, very bad thing. And the media, in particular the mainstream media and the likes of these leftists online that are getting pushed through YouTube, Instagram, TikTok just now and being popularized, are also making the general population, or a percentage of them that are listening, jealous, loathsome, and aggressive towards those that are wealth generators and contributors to our society.
Yeah, that's a key word, right? You've got to contribute. If you're going to get some kind of benefits from the government, some kind of handouts, you've still got to contribute. I mean, I remember as a kid, my mum and dad always worked, right? And you see these other kids at primary school and their mum and dad never worked a day in their life, still got a brand new car in the driveway, get new PS2 that's came out, all that sort of stuff. This has been going on for a long time, but it's definitely gotten worse.
It's generational now.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because the kids have learned from the mum and dad, well, I can get a new TV and I can get a new PS2 and I can still go on holiday every year, and my dad's got a new car, so why the fuck would I work? So why do you think it's getting worse? Is it, you mentioned globalists and stuff, but why is it getting worse?
The UK signed up to a thing called Agenda 2030, and not to be too conspiratorial, but
Oh, please do. I love it.
when it comes to that, the agenda is for more and more people to be reliant on the state and dependent on the state, because when you're dependent on the state, you'll be more adherent to what the state says. So if you have a universal basic income, if you have a social credit score, if you have control mechanisms by the state to decide what you can spend your money on and how much of that money you can have, then you will do what they say. In the same way, when you're a little boy, if your dad's giving you pocket money in exchange for you doing the chores, and you don't get the pocket money without doing the chores, you're going to do the chores.
Yeah.
Because then you can't afford to go to the football or to go and see your mates at the pub or whatever it is that you're trying to do at that age. That's what we're leading to in the UK just now, where if you don't adhere to our ideology, our perspectives, many of which the average person in the street does not agree with because it's contrary to all logic and it's wokeism rather than, or political correctness, whatever term we want to use for that. It's against common sense, because common sense is not common practice in the UK just now. So when that's the case and we have people reliant on the state, they will behave as if it's their daddy, and their daddy's telling them to do this, so they will do that. So if they can keep moving people to be more dependent, and there's that whole benefits trap that we speak about. So say, for example, somebody's working a 0-hour contract and they hit a particular number of hours they get offered where it tips over and they maybe lose child credit, or they lose their housing allowance, or they lose their tax breaks, or they're taxed at a higher tax bracket. They're going to refuse that. Whereas I'm of the belief that if you get offered more work and your work is purposeful and you find it's fulfilling, or at least you know it's going to generate more money, you should keep more money in your back pocket so you can spend it in the economy. So as long as we have this policy directive and this cultural directive where we're discouraging people from working more or working harder or getting promoted or taking the risk and starting the business, then it's going to become a bit of a swamp and a backwater and almost a third world country.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting to that stage. I mean, we were chatting on your podcast. There's no investment in local communities and stuff. I mean, some of the towns and stuff I was visiting back home, it was stark how, and it was bad before I left, but you see the contrast from Dubai to here. Where does this all lead to if it keeps going down this path where entrepreneurs, people, even people who are contributing to the economy, just general employees, where does this lead to if we keep going down this path?
Worst case scenario, civil war. And I don't say that lightly. If you look at South Africa and how they've dealt with things post-apartheid, you can see where that's headed in terms of the safety there for the average person, or the average person of a particular ethnicity anyway. And the UK is heading in that direction where people will feel like they need to do something because they're not being represented at the ballot box. So when they voted for Boris Johnson's Conservative government, and I say Conservative in loose terms because it wasn't Conservative at all in 2019, he didn't implement an agenda that you could relate to a Conservative Party. In fact, he implemented the globalist agenda from the WEF, the World Economic Forum, from the WHO, the World Health Organization, when it came to the quote-unquote pandemic.
You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's in plain sight. And that's where we're getting to. So you'll own nothing and be happy because everything will be looked after for by the state, but we will decide what type of life you will live. And anyone that listens to a podcast like mine, a podcast like yours, built different, you want to excel, you want to progress, you want to move forward. And Tony Robbins says, progress is happiness. You won't be able to progress if the government doesn't let you.
Yeah.
And I'm totally against that. I think the less state intervention in my life and in most people's life, the better. We should have personal agency, personal accountability. We live in a meritocracy, and I'm happy for that to be the case. But we're removing some of that meritocracy, and we're trying to create a level playing field where everyone's equally miserable, equally unhappy, equally subservient, and equally docile, and allowed to only do the things that the state tells us to do. And I don't follow and I don't agree with what they want me to do. Like, I'm not going to limit my carbon output. I'm going to eat steak. I'm going to drive my combustion vehicle car. I'm going to go on holiday. I'm going to go on flights. I'm going to train in the gym. I'm going to expend energy that they don't want me to expend. That's what I want to do, and that's not what they want me to do.
Yeah, for everything that you concede on, they just push the envelope a little bit further. So you've got to draw a line where you're happy to fight. And again, one of the things you've mentioned, which I'd love to talk about because it's a bit of a conspiracy, but it's absolutely true. One of the things you mentioned on the podcast, the hill to die on, is digital ID. And people don't understand this, really. I mean, people think, oh, it's just a conspiracy. Of course, they're not going. You just need to look at what's been done in places like China, other places where they can, as you mentioned, carbon tax. No, you've not got a big enough allowance to have a steak this week, Colin.
Eat the bugs.
Eat the bugs and be happy. These are things that people need to wake up to. There's a little backdoor entry into this where they've brought in business owners in the UK have to.
I had to verify my ID on Company's House.
Yes, yeah. And that's almost like a soft launch. You know, or it's a creep, isn't it? One little step. Rather than a big step, it's one little tiptoe, tiptoe, tiptoe.
Yeah, give an inch to take a mile.
Yeah.
Digital ID is they held it down. I said that, and I stand by what I said there, because once that's implemented, the control mechanisms that are implementable from them downstream from that are unlimited, and they're totalitarian in their nature, where you will have less and less choice. And I think in life, we should have a lot of agency and scope to choose what we want to do, even if that doesn't fit a particular climate narrative, if that doesn't fit a particular political narrative, if that doesn't fit a particular cultural narrative. We have freedom of choice and expression. One of the biggest problems in the UK, it's been far too tolerant of different cultures up until this point, and we've sacrificed our own Judeo-Christian values for everything and anything in the UK.
You're not allowed to have a Union Jack showing or a that's crazy.
I was horrified to see that some of the, and I'll call them Christmas light switch on, were rebranded to festive light switch on.
Yeah.
We're here in Dubai. Dubai is a Muslim country. I have a great respect for the Islamic traditions that they have in this country, but they also have Christmas trees up. They encourage people to go to the church if they have a faith. As long as you respect the native population's religious and cultural views, then you are welcome here. That should be the exact same in the UK, but instead we've almost sacrificed our own culture on the altar of political correctness and made our native population feel worse while making our visitors, who are, remind them, guests in our culture, to feel more important within our society, and that's totally unacceptable.
A lot of these guests aren't contributing again, though. They're coming in. I mean, I did see something. I don't keep an eye on the media too much back home, but I did see something about Scotland's population has been the highest it's ever been recorded. Almost like it was a celebration and a trophy. It's like, wait a minute here. There's a lot of illegal immigration going on. They're going into a lot of communities under the radar, going into hotels and local communities, causing a lot of disruption. It's not getting reported in the media. All this kind of stuff's going on, and people need to wake up to this stuff.
I think more and more people are waking up. So the stuff that I'm seeing online now in the last 12 months, because I've had to, because Cambro remains a self-development podcast.
Yeah.
The conversation we just had on my show, which will, depending on when this comes out, will come out before or after it, was all about how can you be better? How can you work within businesses? How can you grow your revenue streams? How can you have more agency and control? In stark contrast to that is the political will of the UK for some people at the moment is, how can I be more reliant on the state? How can I get more money at the state? How can I feel better? How can I be better looked after?
Have you read 1984 before?
I have. So I read it at university. I studied politics, and while it wasn't a prescribed book on the course, it gave me a good idea into leftism and communism, because that is ultimately, it was based on Soviet Russia, which was primarily led by Stalin for the longest period. And then I read it again during the pandemic because I felt like I was going mad. And reading that, I was like, this is exactly what's happening. It's groupthink. It's the party asked you to deny your eyes and your ears, and they told you what the one truth would be, and you just had to go with that. And they were almost airbrushing history, which is that what they did in 1984. They would rewrite reports. In fact, I think the main character Winston was actually involved, and part of his role was to rewrite history and books from previously to a new version of the truth which suited the agenda. And I see that all the time. And actually, I have a few friends that have since the pandemic that they felt that I was correct on a lot of issues, but they didn't feel that they weren't able to verbalize at the time, or they were scared to verbalize at the time, and they were scared to believe me. And even if you look back at the pandemic, there are people that forget that they were basically grassing in their neighbours for breaking lockdown rules. They were shouting at different employees in work to take the experimental medical treatment that was enforced on people. And I don't think we should be allowed to rewrite history. People should remember what happened during that period as a stark warning of what can happen going forward. And the climate agenda is a big part of that. Social credit, digital ID, universal basic income, totalitarian control, all falls under that bracket. So let's learn the lessons from history in the past. History is not always a predictor of the future, but it does give some indications of the direction of travel if we don't take a different path.
Totally agree with that. You've had a lot of guests on the podcast, and you're an excellent communicator, right? It's one of the amazing things about you, right? You're really great at verbalizing this stuff, a lot better than I am. But when it comes to all the guests you've had on, is that, and I know you studied politics, I believe, at university. Having those guests, that background, is that what's helped shape your view on all this stuff? Because obviously it's something you're very passionate about, something I agree with on pretty much every point you've made there.
I think guests have had an influence. I think the guests typical in Cambro across like the 340 that are out at the time of speaking are primarily ones that allow you to optimize brain, body, business. But when the macro factors are so large in the UK, you also have to acknowledge those as well. So it's probably only been in the last 12 months, apart from perhaps Zube, who I had on during the pandemic.
Hi, Stephen here with a quick interruption to the podcast. If you're listening to this, chances are you're a business owner, an operator, or someone who wants to buy a company and scale it the right way. If you want help with deal flow, acquisitions, one-to-one mentorship, or you want to use AI to grow your business faster, go to stephenpettigrew.co.uk. You'll find everything there. My acquisition frameworks, mentorship options, AI systems, and all the tools that will help you grow, fix, or buy a business. That's stephenpettigrew.co.uk. Go check it out. Now let's get back to the episode.
I've gotten a little bit more political because I've had to. Because if you don't speak now, then you've got real problems. And Trotsky, of all people, who's a Russian communist, he has a quote: you may not care about war, revolution, and politics, but war, revolution, and politics care about you. Yeah. So it's come to the stage where I was pretty politically inactive other than voting at the ballot box up until this last kind of 18 months, because it got to a stage where I was like, holy shit, we are going off a cliff face if this continues this way. And if we keep going that direction of travel, we could be in real trouble. So the podcast on the whole will remain something that allows somebody to self-develop and improve themselves, but it's only recently that I've had more political guests and I've learned from them. But those political guests suit my worldview. So I haven't really changed my world through guests. I've probably reinforced it or learned little bits and pieces which have allowed me to be more coherent. But I've long been somebody that's had a pretty strong political opinion. Listeners may laugh at this, and particularly from a Scottish perspective, and I encourage you not to switch off at this point. But my middle name's Thornton, which is my mother's maiden name. My grandpa that played for Rangers Football Club. But I'm very proud of my heritage. In the yearbook at school, people changed it to Colin Campbell because of my politics. So I've always been somebody that's been right of centre and always believed in a small government. I believed in privatisation. I believed in low tax. I believed in entrepreneurship, social mobility, the ability to own your own property, all the things that Thatcher stood for, in my opinion. But in Scotland, Thatcher has a legacy where people remember the poll tax, remember challenging the unions and shutting down some of the industry, which it had to happen. And we're going to speak about AI, I'm sure, in this podcast as well. And that's going to happen in the future moving forward because we have to move with the times. But politically, I've always been somebody that's been forthright and able to speak about my views and been happy to do so from an educator perspective, despite maybe being smeared with isms or ists or taglines that may have shut me up. I'm not willing to shut up, especially not now.
Well, you've got a great platform as well. You can do this. You've got a big audience. I'm curious though, right? Because you mentioned this on my podcast. The political parties we have, at the moment, Reform is, I suppose, the slight contrast to Labour, Conservative, etc. But do you really believe that they're, for example, going to make a difference if they were voted in? And the reason I say that, going back to something you said, we've got big government, small state, big government, and these people are entrenched, like they've been in position for 10, 20, 30 years. The political party that's brought in, they're there for 4 years, they're keeping the seats warm. They're not really, in my opinion, they're not really running the show. It's the people behind there that's the problem. So without being completely defeatist and negative, how do you actually, how do we get out of this position? Because the next party that comes in might say something to get in and then completely change, like most of them do.
Yeah. I think Reform's your best bet, because it's probably the only party that's willing to not do things that are in line with the status quo. The important point you mentioned is the judiciary and the civil service and the House of Lords are all deeply embedded in what Trump would call the deep state, which is the UK version of our back-end system. They refused to implement Brexit in a way that many people, over 17 million or however many it was, voted for, including myself. And that wasn't implemented in a way that any of us are particularly happy with. We're actually still in what's called the ECHR, which is the European Convention on Human Rights, which means we can't deport the 41,000 jihadis that are on a watch list in the UK. Yep. And I say this sitting in a Muslim country where the Islam that I experience is so positive, so supportive, so safe. Yep. And then we've got 41,000 extremists in the UK that we're not deporting. That's the same size as Hampden, where the people will recognise how many people that is. Yep. They are in the UK active and potentially
it's increasing
all the time. Yeah, that's right. Especially with the boats. And when the civil service and the judiciary are unwilling to back the political will of the country on a referendum like Brexit, let alone when Reform hopefully will win the next general election, that is a problem. But you have to get Reform in to try and reform those other bodies It will take time though. And David Bell, who was on my podcast, he's actually just moved to Portugal, much like you fled the UK to live in Dubai, and we'll see what happens with me in the near future, albeit I remain very patriotic and I want to stand and fight as much as I can. He was saying that even if reform come in 2029, I would hope sooner if Starmer's government falls to bits, which it may well do, when they come in, it's still going to take time to fix things. So the UK could genuinely be a project up until 2035 is not the way that we want it to be. But my only hope is that we must take the first step, which is removing the Labour Party, which are globalists, the Conservative Party, who have sold out to the globalists, the SNP, which I don't even want to get started on because we're going to get in trouble. Get them out as much as possible. Interestingly, I've spoken to a lot of people who previously voted SNP because they were patriotic Scottish people, and they sort of saw it wrapped up in this sort of soft, woolly nationalism. Which is definitely not the case if you look under the cover and if you listen to some of the politicians. I mean, listen to Hamza Yusuf, he was absolutely terrifying, wasn't he? If we don't get a right of centre political party who have an agenda which is in contrast to the WEF, the WHO, the EU, the UN, then we have no hope whatsoever. So the first step is we must politically make a change in some way and then give them the chance. If they come in and don't deliver, that's when we might lead to a civil war, genuinely. I pray to God and I pray to whatever you believe in that doesn't happen. But the first step is political change on some level and give them the chance to make the changes to the House of Lords, to the judiciary, to the civil service, and try and move things forward. Yeah, listen, before we move on, there'll be politics threads all the way through this conversation. But the Trotsky quote. We might not care about it, but it cares about us. So we have to speak about it on some level. Totally. The breaking point will come, you're right, because people can only take so much when it comes to decisions being made, hit them in the pocket, their quality of life deteriorating. They see the safety in their local communities deteriorating. And the thing is, right, you see something on the news and you think, oh, it won't happen where I am. It will. And it'll happen. Well, it happened on Bondi Beach yesterday. Correct. And the Australians have a tighter immigration policy than the UK, but still not tight enough. Yeah. And that's terrifying. Oh, that whole episode yesterday was incredibly... It was harrowing. Distressing. And what's most upsetting is that is becoming more and more commonplace. I wasn't shocked by it. I was not like taken aback. I was like, oh, that was going to happen. So 9/11 in the US, 7/7 in London in the UK, and then the next one that a lot of people remember is the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. Yep. At what point do you recognise that you have a significant problem with the type of people that you're bringing into your country who do not share your values, they refuse to assimilate, and in fact, they hate everything you stand for? Yep. That is the problem. If you're not willing to come to our country, assimilate, integrate, and contribute, you're going home. I don't care if you were born here. Yep. If your parents arrived and they didn't integrate into society, you are also going home. Mm-hmm. And I don't think mass deportations is something that you should say lightly, because it sounds like, oh, it's such a huge project. It is the only way. And I think if I said that a year ago, less people listening to this would have agreed with me, because it sounds like an extremist, quote unquote, far right. But far right's no longer there. It's just right or correct. Well, what's the meme? Like every conspiracy theory from 6 months ago is actually came to reality now. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm a prediction. Machine. One of my, I've posted this a few times on LinkedIn. If I was to have a second podcast, it would be purely on conspiracy theories. So I'll maybe get you on that when I set it up. Yeah, let's do it. It could be quite fun. So we will go a little bit lighter now. We'll come back to politics because it threads through everything. But you mentioned brain, body, business, and that's been the kind of main theme of your podcast since you started it back in 2020. I suppose I've got 2 out of the 3. Definitely not got body yet, so I'm working on that. But why did you go for those 3 elements, and was that intentional at the beginning when you set it up? I think I probably focused on brain and body at the start because I was the most credible at that. I'd built a really good physique and I really felt I looked after my mentality and my mindset for a long time, and I was consuming a lot of content in that space. And one of the frameworks that I used for the podcast, and you'll know this from doing my podcast masterclass video course, is you should speak about things that you have a passion for and a little bit of a track record so that you can hold an interesting conversation with the guest and contribute a little bit, while of course recognizing that they're the expert and they're the one that's going to bring value. The business element, in 2020, I was a good salesperson and I was doing relatively well, but I hadn't had huge success because I hadn't quite found the vehicle where I could deliver huge revenue for a business. I had a really good skill set and I had some pretty good training up until that point and had a bit of a track record with a few things in new business and account management. But it was only really in 2021 where I moved job and I moved into the furniture industry from insurance that I started to deliver serious numbers and I started to show what I was capable of. I started to reach my potential because I knew I had potential, but I hadn't quite found the vehicle to really apply that in and have success. So the business element started to come in more and more and more as I started to become more interested in that as well. And it started to shape the type of people listening to the show, because maybe the people that started listening in 2020, I'm sure there's a few OGs that are there that love the show and support from the start, which is amazing. But the audience is obviously growing year on year and year and compounded, and maybe slightly shifted in demographic towards the type of people that want to hear about brain, body, and business. But I definitely believe that the three are interlinked. So there will be an episode where somebody comes on that it might be primarily a health episode, but you'll talk a lot around how that then benefits your brain and then how that benefits your ability to perform in your business as well. So it's all interlinked. But I think the two Bs at the start were very much brain and body, and the business element has grown as my credibility in that space has grown, but also my interest in that space has grown, and the interest of the listeners in that space has grown too. Yeah,
because you're right. All three are connected. A lot of business people will tune in for, and it's interchangeable things you're talking about. Like there's systems and processes that can apply across all three, functions. So yeah, you've definitely got a really interesting niche there. I'm curious to know, right? So at that time, you're still in corporate. You were still, I think, you're in insurance at that time. How did they take the news of you starting a podcast? Because I'm making this story up in my mind where they're like, well, you can't do that. You're going to impact the brand image, or you just need to focus on us and nothing else. Just work for us.
Sales is interesting because you have a bit more autonomy than other roles. So if you're good at what you do, they typically give you a longer leash. And any business I've worked within, I've always been one of the top performers. And I think with discipline and structure comes freedom.
Yeah.
With performance and delivery comes a bit of autonomy that they maybe wouldn't give to Joe Blogs or Sally that sits in HR or Sally that sits in marketing.
Yep.
I was always somebody that could come in and deliver. So when I moved to the last company I worked with in insurance in 2019, I told them about my Instagram that I've been building that at the time maybe had like 10, 11K followers, mostly posting about fitness and mindset. Yep. And I said, this is pre-existing. I won't be watering this down. I'll be continuing to post this stuff. Coming in with your eyes open. Can you remove the clause in my contract that says I mustn't have any external business interests? And they were like, yes, as long as it's not damaging to the company or your performance at work. And it never was damaging performance at work. So when I added the podcast, I didn't even mention it. It just was an expansion of what I was already doing with the online platform, because I think it was something like Colin has existing interests with online content creation, and these are not in competition with the interests of Marshall McClellan, who I was working for at the time. So
you were building a personal brand all throughout this. Was that intentional? Because you're probably building that before people spoke about personal brands and building your personal brand, or was
way before that? Yeah. And I wasn't a disciple of Gary Vee, but I appreciated what he put out there because he talked a little bit around it being digital real estate. And the best time to buy real estate was yesterday. The next best time is today, typically in the market anyway, because at least you've got an asset that you can hold on to. Even if it goes down in value, you still live there. And I saw, in particular, Instagram at that point in time, what then became my LinkedIn, which is sizable now, and of course the podcast and the YouTube channel that sit off the back of that, as investments that I was making and to give me options moving forward. Side note, I also really enjoyed creating the content. So see, when the podcast in the early days was maybe getting a couple hundred downloads, maybe 300, 400, 500 downloads an episode, I didn't get discouraged, even though that's bigger than a lot of podcasts to get started because I had a pre-existing audience that came across. I didn't let it get to me because I was just enjoying getting to speak to interesting people. I was enjoying having the conversation. So it's hard to compete with somebody having fun.
Yeah.
And I was having a lot of fun. And now it's a bit of a behemoth. Like the Spotify Wrapped every year, you're always like, oh my goodness, I never realized how many people, like somebody posted they listened to like 3,000 minutes of Cambro. And I was like, that's amazing. And it was in the top 5% of all video podcasts on Spotify. And it's in the top 1% on listen notes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So there's thousands of people that tune in every single week and they support the show and they rate it and they push it. But in the early days, I was just showing up because I enjoyed doing it. The process. And I'd committed that it was going to be something that was important to me. And when I commit to something that's important to me, best believe I'm going to put my all into it and I'm going to keep showing up. And I think a lot of that came from my background in lifting weights and building a body I was proud of. It came from knowing that to close big deals in sales, you need to do a particular amount of outreach, a particular quality of outreach, a particular volume of it, a particular frequency of it. I need to keep going to get to the deal and the handshake and the commission check at the end. Yep. So when I could see those lessons from other areas of my life, I just decided I was going to apply that in content creation as well.
One of the things you're really well known for is your research into guests and the effort you put in. Now, I kind of speak, having done a few, I think I've maybe done 35 or something, right? It's tough. And, would I say I've enjoyed it? I've enjoyed elements of it, but doing what I do, try to fit it all in has been tough. And at certain points, I've thought to myself, is this worth it? At certain points, I've felt I've not actually got the right energy for this. It's a hard gig. People don't realise that. Have you ever struggled with that? And we are on point with like all the stuff around that, nutrition, fitness, etc. Have you got to a point at any stage where you thought, this is too hard, or I'm not getting a material benefit at the back end of this?
Yeah, so the podcast probably started washing its face in terms of sponsor money after 100 episodes. Mm. But around like 90 to 100, I got a few guest rejections of people that I wanted to have on the show that I knew would be great for the audience and I knew would help me grow the show as well. Because in the early days, I was fortunate. It wasn't luck, it was by design in terms of the Instagram audience that I had, that meant that some of them came across straight away into the podcast. But in the early days in the podcast, you are piggybacking and benefiting from the guest audience who will share it and cross-pollinate people to come and listen as well, and then stick around because there's more episodes to listen to and more coming. But between 90 and 100, there was quite a few rejections of people that I thought would be good for the show and I thought would help me grow it. And I was a bit like, goodness me, like if I can't get these guests on after doing 100 episodes, I might never be able to get these guests on. I wonder what I need to do to get to that stage. So there was a little bit of doubt there, but you have to banish the doubt. And there's a thing called the sunk cost fallacy. So you do have an emotional attachment to keep going to some extent, but you must keep going in vehicles that are right for you. And I knew that the podcast was a good vehicle and I was already seeing intangible benefits. So not just fiscally in terms of the sponsor money and the ability to fund the show, but also the personal brand element, the network element, not just in terms of guests, but in terms of the type of people that listen to podcasts are generally interesting people and like generally a bit more like me. Yeah. And then of course there was the actual potential asset that I was building there that I knew was going to grow. And there's the whole kind of hockey stick analogy where you see the graph and it's just ticking along, and then it goes up. Now I've never had like crazy exponential growth where there's been a year where it's just gone completely up, but it's just kind of consistently just built and maybe had like little micro hockey sticks along the way where the Daniel Priestley episode went really well, the Rory Sutherland episode went really well, the Sahil Bloomer episode, the Dr. Julie Gunner episode.
Critical Drinker.
Yeah, that did really well on YouTube in particular because again, we got a bit political, didn't we? And when those things happen, it just encourages you to keep going, but you must enjoy your craft to some extent outside of that. And I'm sure you found that when it's come to the deals acquisition space, there's particular deals that will be like, whoa, I'm so glad I'm doing this. But then there'll be a few ones that are a bit more mundane or around the mill. And they're almost like, and Joe Rogan talks about this, it's painting a mountain, a layer of paint at a time. And can you imagine painting a mountain? It's just thousands and thousands of repetitions to build up this huge structure. Yeah. The podcast is the exact same, and I always looked at it in that way, even though there's been like small wobbles along the way where you're a bit like, oh, it's a bit disappointing. But it's now at escape velocity where people want to come on the show inbound, let alone outreach. And I love doing it anyway. So why would I not keep going?
Yeah, again, I don't know exactly your listener base, but it's going to be a loyal band of listeners that's been with you for a long time. And
it's always adding to it as well.
Exactly. And you'll probably, you said you've not had a hockey stick moment, a major one, but that'll probably come again with more.
It may do. It may be episode 400, maybe 450. I don't mind, but I'm going to keep showing up and enjoy it. Yeah, exactly. Let's get it out
there. So, podcast is building. You're in the corporate world. You recently left that last corporate position you were in, but you had the wherewithal to start building things around you before that company you're with eventually went out of business. Talk to me a little bit about that experience, because we spoke about another show. For some people, it's devastating to lose that job. It's your only income stream. It's your only method of earning an income. Bills, yeah. You managed to see in foresight, years before that, to build stuff around you, an ecosystem. What was the moment like when you found out the news of that company going under, first of all?
I was very calm because the plan was to leave November, December this year at the time of recording anyway, but it happened in July because I was building, the analogy I use is the parachute to jump out of the corporate world, but also the launch pad with the business to spring up and it be really successful from the very, very start, which is not common for most businesses. Many businesses go bust in the first year or they don't make the profit they wanted to make. Probably two reasons that I was building the sales coaching business alongside my day job. Number one, I'd been through redundancy in 2019 where I moved from my first graduate role where I'd worked my way up and I was kind of the golden boy of new business in that company, and they thought the sun shone out of my behind, which it sometimes does. And that was going really, really well. I moved to a bigger and better company. They got bought by an American hedge fund. And although that company was very profitable, the UK operation was great, they were like, we're not going to operate in the UK anymore. So they made all the 120 staff, however many it was, in the UK redundant. So I had a bit of a warning shot that regardless of how well thought of you are or whatever kind of good company you move to, things can happen in the corporate world that are way outside of your control. So that was a light bulb moment to be like, this is back in 2019, you are just a number at the end of the day and you must think with you first. And there's a phrase that one of my coaching clients, Dave Lewis, who's an IFA, speaks about, and he uses this to help people understand about their career trajectory, their money management, their pensions, life insurance, and stuff. You are in the business of you. And that was a bit of a warning. Like, regardless of what happens, Colin, just think about, even if you get into a sales director role, which I did, head of business development, somebody that was really well thought of and well paid, just remember that when something happens within the company, nobody owes you anything.
Yeah. They don't care about you.
No, especially bigger businesses. I think if you're online to the founder or the owner and you're an SME and there's a bit more of a connection, even then you can still get thrown under the bus at some point, or things might not go your way, or if something massive happens within their life, it may affect the entire business.
Yeah.
But that was a bit of a warning sign. And then second of all, I had this personal brand that was building. I didn't ever really want to do just like fitness coaching, albeit I've got a lot of expertise in that space, but I knew that I could provide support to somebody, whether it was for brain body business optimization or whether it was to be a bit more niche and to be within the sales space. So I was building that up, and probably around 2022, when people started to see the numbers that I was doing in the furniture business, and it was kind of evident on LinkedIn in particular that I was smashing it, I was getting a lot of job offers. And two of them in particular, I went through the process with them, had a chat about heads of business development, sales director roles, and the numbers didn't stack for me to move to them because they were selling products that were of a lower value than what I was selling, and I couldn't deliver as much revenue for them. And ultimately, as a sales professional, if you deliver the maximum revenue at a profitable margin, you'll get paid a bigger commission than if I'm selling £1.7 million worth of furniture at a 45% margin or a 50% margin, of course they're going to pay me over six figures. Whereas if I go to, for example, and this may or may not be a business that I've helped, a letting agency that is listing properties and using an online portal to list more properties for landlords outside of the jurisdiction, if they're selling a package similar to a Rightmove for like $1,000, $2,500, how many of those do I need to sell to earn six figures in commission? A lot, and probably not possible. So when I went through the process with companies like that, I would say, thank you very much for your offer. I'm not going to accept. I'm going to stay where I am, continue to build my platform. However, I am happy to come in and train your team because you can't have me, but I can teach them my frameworks, my processes, my approach to sales, and they can get some of that without me necessarily working for you. And that was a light bulb moment because I went into those businesses, and I've always been somebody that likes to label things because it helps me to understand them myself. And I had these frameworks and these names for things that, albeit some of them have been borrowed for other people that I've worked with over the years or other content creators that I've shaped, and I built that into my own sort of thing. So I started to have this almost like online workshop that I could deliver. So I did that for two businesses, got paid really handsomely for it, and then never spoke really about it because I didn't think my employer would be happy with it at that point in time. And then I stopped to give a shit further down the line. But that was the light bulb moment. One, redundancy in 2019, you're just a number. Even if you're doing really, really well, you may get punted or everyone will get punted. And then two, you've got this online platform, you've got this brand, you've got people that are interested in what you're up to, you've got a skill set and you're a good communicator when it comes to sales, or it may be other avenues as well in the future, brain and body are definitely things that I'm toying with as well. And I've got a couple of guys that I'm doing sort of productivity stuff with now as well. I had this platform and I had proof of concept that I could go into an organization with a team of 5 to 10 employees and improve their sales process, and they would go away with my templates, my frameworks that they could put into their industry, and it's almost industry agnostic as well. So that was really exciting, and that was there. And then probably it took until September 2024 when I did two really pretty big workshops that were like publicized. So one of them was Prime Property Auctions, John and Lewis, who many Scottish
Lewis's VA talks comments on my LinkedIn post.
Oh really? I love it. His LinkedIn's grown though, isn't it? So fair play to him.
It's working.
And did something for Prime, and then I spoke at a property mastermind as well, and both of those were filmed. So straight away businesses were a bit more like, oh, I didn't know you offered sales coaching. And I was like, well, that's me now done 5 workshops. I can probably do some one-to-one stuff with either a business owner, an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or just a professional who's earning good money but knows they can earn more commission. And if they invest a little bit with me, they can get a return on that. So from September 2024, I started to take it a lot more seriously, started speaking about it on LinkedIn, started speaking about my own sales process on LinkedIn, not just my sales results, like telling them how the cake was made, not just the cake itself. And then the business started to grow quite significantly to the point that I knew that by December 2025, I wanted to do this full time alongside the podcast. It just so happened that the push when the business went sideways that I was working for in July 2025, I was able to go, right, cool. I've got the parachute, I've got the launch pad, let's go.
Good to go. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Sales is something that I've probably not, until the last year or two, put a lot of focus on. And I realised around that time that sales is a skill. And founders, business owners, salespeople and sales teams, they think they know how to sell, but quite often they don't. They don't have any structure, any systems. They don't train. They don't invest in any. And that doesn't need to be with a coach, just even reading a book. Could be anything. Is that your perception of other salespeople, other sales teams, sales directors, founders that you've worked with, that you've worked with from a consultancy basis, but also employee to employee? Is that common? And if so, why?
I've worked with some incredible salespeople, but as a percentage, it's very, very low. And I've worked with some founders or been friends with some founders or business owners that are great at certain elements of the sales process, or they're great in bursts, starts and bursts. I much prefer consistency. And I think anyone that's looking to buy a business or sell a business that you know an awful lot about, predictability is massive. So while it's a skill, it's also a system and a process that means that when you're in a high vibe or you're in a low vibe, you show up in a pretty similar way and you deliver pretty similar inputs and therefore relatively similar outputs. Because that's not guaranteed, but at least you give yourself the biggest possible chance of doing so. So the biggest thing that I noticed was that many people went through peaks and troughs, both as a business owner, but also as a sales professional. And you can start to eliminate that by having a map or an idea of what good looks like from Monday to Friday, from Q1 to Q2, from Q2 to Q4. And once we understand that, we can then plug in the templates, the frameworks, the skills, the soft skills, the communication skills that I teach. But first things first, eliminate that sort of running on a vibe. And we speak about my good friend and my copywriter, and I'm sure somebody that you'll do work with, Chris Burns. One of the things we're speaking about, he's like, what problem do you solve? And I was like, a lot of the time I solve inconsistency in sales. And like, oh, the pipeline looks crap for next month, I better do some outbound. What? It should be like brushing your teeth. Outbound's happening, whether it's raining, snowing, sun split in the sky, you've hit a record month, or actually the business is in the shit and you've got a massive tax bill that you need to generate some revenue for because Rachel on accounts wants more money. It's eliminating that and ensuring that regardless of how you feel, regardless of what's happening within the business, regardless of what's happening in the outside world, you're in a position where you know what a good sales process looks like in terms of every single step along the way, and you know how to implement that over and over and over again with a level of excellence that we iterate on time over and over and over again. So
we both had Spencer Lodge on the podcast, and he was on mine fairly recently, and obviously sales expert, and he was saying, especially in the UK, sales has got this really bad baggage around it. You know, people think of a window salesman or something, car salesman. It's just these horrible connotations.
Have you seen White Gold?
No.
With so it's a double glazing salesman from the 80s,
right?
And it is literally just like scamming people. I think it's very like people view the solar industry just now, where like they come in your house and they sit there for 4 hours and tell you, like, I can get you this grant for 10 grand, and it means that your package is only 3 grand, and you're thinking, what is going on here? Yeah,
it's horrible. So sales has got, especially in the UK, has got this horrible baggage, but it is a skill, and I want to get a wee bit tactical with, if you don't mind, and we can use me as a guinea pig here. If I come to you as a founder and I say, Colin, my sales are just crap. It's either me or my sales team. We're not closing enough sales. There's not enough money coming in. Diagnose me. What's the first things we look at?
So you said we don't close enough sales. We need to know how much is coming in on top of the funnel. So if the funnel is shaped like this, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this, but try and visualize in your head if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. At the top of the funnel is lead generation. So how much and where are we finding these customers? What do they look like? Who's their ideal client profile? What problems do they have? What issues do they have? What are their drivers? What are their motivations? And what is there after that they want to experience. So your after is shifting from you and your company to your client and their future. What do they want to experience?
Transformation.
Yeah, exactly. What do they want to experience? So if you're a fitness coach, it isn't a 12-week fat loss program. It's a leaner, fitter, stronger body that you feel more confident in. If you're a gardener, it's not we cut your lawn once a week and we cut your hedges once every fortnight. It's a clean, aesthetic garden that you don't do and it's hands off. If you're a lawyer, it's not, oh, I represent you at trial and I meet up with you twice. It's I keep you out of jail or you pay a reduced fine.
Yeah.
If you don't know what customers or what avatar you're helping and how you're going to help them in terms of what you're going to cause for them, you've got a lot of problems. So that's the top of the funnel. Within the funnel is your outreach, your inbound content, your paid ads, whatever strategy you're using to get people into that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look at how well that's done. And then we're going to assess your discovery meeting or your sales process. So after somebody agrees to a meeting or agrees to move to a proposal or to review or to look at the requirements, how do you run that meeting? What questions do you ask? What information do you gather? What commitments you gain? What information do you give them about your service to help them picture how good it's going to be to work with you? What social proof, testimonials, case studies, potentially referrals do you include within that process as well? And then how do you present your offer based on what they've told you so that you can close, objection handle, move the sale forward, or understand if you're even good fit whatsoever? So I think it goes through that sort of stage one. Who on earth are we talking to? How do we talk to them and get a meeting with them? What do we say within that meeting and how do we position our value and understand if we can help? And then how do I overcome any objections, hurdles, obstacles? And then how do I close? And then after that comes the delivery, which most people are good at. Most companies are pretty good at the delivery and the service typically.
Yeah.
But it's the sales process above that where they're maybe trying to speak to the wrong clients. They don't know what to say to them to get a meeting. They don't know what to say to them if they do get a meeting. They don't know how to present the proposal and add value. And they don't know how to objection handle or follow up on that to get it over the line.
Yeah, objection handling is a funny term, isn't it? Because when people hear a no, they instantly go, okay, and that's enough for them. Whereas a no is almost an invite to ask a bit more. Like, okay, understand what you said. Let's unpack that a wee bit. You said it's about budget. You said it's about time. Let's dig into that. Why isn't it the right time? When is the right time? What is your budget? Why have you not allocated the budget? It's fact finding, and then you unpick that and you get to the root cause. And eventually, if it's the right solution for them, they'll come on board.
Your job as a salesperson is to give complete clarity so they can make a decision that they feel emotionally, financially safe to proceed with. If you don't do that, it's your fault. It's not the prospect's fault. Now, some prospects you deal with are going to be impossible to deal with. They're going to be very difficult. They're going to be a really challenging buyer. But if you have your avatar and your client profile, ideal client profile clear, you won't have as many of those because you know your product or service is a relevant fit for them. And interestingly enough, one of the things that one of my ex-pro rugby player clients has a really big LinkedIn, really big Instagram. So when he turned his content on to his performance and leadership coaching business, the inquiry level is really, really high. You don't just need to qualify prospects, you also need to disqualify prospects because people are going to be inappropriate. Actually, I won't name the guy, but a guy booked in with me for a discovery call about my sales level up coaching, which was a 4-call package, doing all the things that we spoke about. Ideal client profile, outreach, discovery meeting structure, objection handling, closing, follow-up.
No one remembered.
And he reached out and I looked at his LinkedIn and the role that he was working in. I was thinking, financially, I don't think, one, you can afford this based on the package you're likely on in the role that I'm looking at. And two, I don't know if I can generate enough benefit for you because you probably don't sell something high enough value that means that you might make the company an extra 500 grand and you might get paid an extra 50 grand on that or 30 grand on that. So obviously you've paid for my course 3, 4, 5 times over, how many times over that is. That is something that you also have to do. So you must not just qualify your prospects and see if they're a good fit. You must disqualify prospects before you get to discovery because you're going to waste time and energy in your calendar doing so. So for that ex-Irish Rugby International, when he turned on his funnel on Instagram and LinkedIn, he got so much inquiry. He was like, mate, I'm jumping on calls with people that are totally inappropriate. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll build a question set for you. You can ask over DM or over email, or you can ask on your Jot form or your type form. I'm agnostic to whatever one you use to make sure you can assess, and you can then cancel the call or offer them something that's like maybe a free guide, or you can have like a low ticket product that you offer them for 27 quid, 47 quid that gives them a bit of value they can work on away from it. And then when they're in a position financially that they can afford the one-to-one or the workshops or whatever it is you offer, we can do that down the line.
It's interesting you said there, right? So that process from end to end there, because you map that out and then there's a break somewhere, you actually can pinpoint exactly where the break is and then work on that specific problem. So whether it's the funnel, whether it's the qualification questions, whatever, but you don't know that until you've actually put it all and joined it all together.
What was really good is that ex-rugby player had no preconceived ideas of what his sales process should look like, and he didn't lie to me. He was like, when a lead comes in, we do this, and we do that every time. He was like, when a lead comes in Instagram, what do I do?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we book a discovery call, we ask them this in advance. On the discovery call, we're going to talk about this, we're going to ask them about this, and then we're going to position our offer, and then we're going to send them this, and if they don't reply, we're going to send them this, or if they do reply, we're going to send them this, or we're going to send them this contract, or this DocuSign, or this Stripe link, whatever it was, okay? A lot of business owners are like, when a lead comes in, we do this, and then we do this. But sometimes we do this and we do this, and you're like, okay, no.
Jenny does this, Peter does this.
That's right. That's right. So if they have a sales team with a few different individuals, they're like, this guy's worked in the industry for years and he always does this and he does really, really well. Okay, cool. He's a bit of a maverick. Give him a bit of a looser lead. He's going to deliver. Same as I was. When I told them I had a big Instagram, they were like, we don't really like that, but we're going to let him do it because he's going to do numbers for us.
Yeah.
But recognize that not everyone's going to be cut from the cloth of maybe the guy that's a bit of an operator in your business is a bit of a maverick. Let's optimize for your average employee and give them the process, the toolkit, and the intellectual property that we're speaking about on my show to go and do their job as best they can and give them the best opportunity to be successful.
Mm-hmm. So sales is clearly a passion of yours, right? The types of people you're working with or want to work with, who they look like. So we spoke, in my opinion, and you might agree or disagree, the sweet spot for you is kind of businesses doing, I don't know, between 500 grand, depending on what type of business it is, to maybe 5 million. That's a big bandwidth. Is that the type of businesses that you can help and have helped?
I've worked with smaller businesses in that as well.
Right.
Where maybe they're just getting VAT registered or it's an employee that's basically self-employed. So I've actually got quite a lot of IFA and wealth managers, so independent financial advisors and wealth managers, because while they work for a Rathbones, a Biograph, St James's Place, a Quilter, they are effectively self-employed.
Yeah, and if you can increase their performance,
massively
it's huge.
so.
Yeah,
so I think the biggest thing that I think I can work with people on is people that sell something that they can sell more of it profitably.
Yeah.
And by the time they paid my fee, they can significantly increase.
Massive return.
Yeah, the return. Anything that you invest in, so it depends on how much value you place on your body. For example, if you invest £400 a month with an online fitness coach, but you value an improved body on your next holiday or at your wedding or whatever event you're going to at many thousands of multiples of that £400 a month across 3 months, then we're laughing. Yep. So in the same way, if you work with me across a 4-call package and you pay me $2,000 or whatever it is I decide to charge you at that moment in time, then
you're higher than that now, aren't you, Cole?
I'm joking. So yeah, $2,000 for example. If I know that I can generate a few more sales, we're going to be in a great position. One of my clients in Edinburgh has a design-led kitchen business. They sell kitchens for 60, 70, 80, 100 grand. I coach their team for a fraction of that. And if they can close 1 or 2 more kitchens the next month, they've paid for the workshop in droves. So I think my ideal client avatar is making sure that somebody's selling something that's high value. So the guy that reached out that I told you was financially inappropriate, he was selling particular things that were like £200-300 sales. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to have to generate you a lot more sales and get you a lot better just to pay off what you've paid me. So I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that power, the power of saying no, both for your benefit and their benefit, is actually amazing. Something that you might have clocked onto working with all these companies and being in business now is businesses will invest so much money and throw money into marketing, for example, just without any plan, just keep throwing money in different ways, whether it's paid ads, content, whatever, right? They'll just throw money at it, but they don't invest. Usually none of them invest any money at all into the sales process. But if they actually just done that, it would
conversion rates massively up. Yeah.
Yeah, but without actually spending any more money on the marketing side necessarily.
One of the things that my friend and I were speaking about at dinner the other night was some people catch plenty of rabbits, but they don't know how to cook it into rabbit pie. Yeah. And that's where I come in. So I can help at the front end as well. Like I'm really good at outreach. Actually, One of the reasons that I grew the podcast so fast with really high quality guests is I could get into their DMs and their emails way better. Yeah. Way better than most. And I could write a really good message. I've got a structure called the 3 Whys, which you know about as well through doing the masterclass. If you have a big spend on marketing when it's lead generation, paid partnerships, referrals, affiliates, whatever it is, and then you don't have a sales process that comes after that, that spend is not being best used. You might be like, oh, my ROAS is really good because when we do get a client, it massively returns my ad spend. But we could get that ROAS, that return on ad spend, so much higher if when we catch the rabbit, we know exactly the process it's going to take to get into the kitchen and cook it into a pie that you can serve on a plate.
Yeah. You're good at analogies. I'm terrible at analogies. You know, I've interviewed a few people now and I've spoke to hundreds of business owners. You know, there's some people that are just amazing at analogies. I'm not one of them. Daniel Priestley's another one that just rhymes off all these analogies.
Great, yeah.
Great contextualize.
I think you learn ones over time that resonate, and then you reuse them. There will definitely be ones that you use within your. Like if I watched you on a prospect call, and one of the things that we would do if we worked together, we would watch those back, and I would be like, okay, that story really works because I have a line that's called facts tell, stories sell. And you wrap up your facts and your information about your business or the impact that your product or your service has in a story from a client. And my IFA guys are really good at that now. So we built a story for one of my clients around inflation because a lot of their wealth management clients that they're speaking to are like, okay, so how does that work from that perspective? How do it protect against inflation? So he tells a story about inflation now. It's all about the facts of it's X% a year, your wealth is not moving at that, your investments are moving at that, but he wraps it in a story. So in the same way when I'm talking there about if we're cooking a rabbit, for argument's sake, lots of people want to catch the rabbit, but what on earth do they do with when they get it? That it just helps bring it to life. And I use that regularly now because I learned it a few weeks ago and then I talked about it at dinner with my friend and now I'm speaking about it in a podcast. So I've learned it and I'm verbalizing it. So I'll use it more going forward if it resonates. Yeah,
I do use some, just when you're saying that. There's one that I use about this leaky bucket, you know, especially when somebody's looking for money off me for investment. Like, they've no cash flow forecast in place and they're like, oh, I need 50 grand, I need 100 grand. Okay, but what's the process? Exactly, tell me where it's going. I've poured this money in, there's holes in the bucket, it just seeps back out. So we need to fix the holes in the bucket first before you take investment from anybody, whether it's from me or one of these loan sharks or high interest loans. So the analogy thing's interesting because I watch people and they bring things to life.
But we can just borrow them from others.
Oh yeah.
And then put them into your own words. So an analogy I use I have one American client just now, a couple in Dubai, mostly in the UK. The analogies I use across those, they need to be culturally appropriate. There's a book, my friend Zach, who I met out here for dinner the other night, and we end up in February 30 of all places, which is, anyone that's coming to Dubai, definitely go there. He was talking about, there's a book called The Culture Map.
Is that because there's a lot of talent there, Colin?
I would strongly recommend, if you're a single guy, February 30 is a great place to be. You do need to have a bit about you though, because the girls are looking for a high caliber guy. I just about made the cut. He was talking about a book called The Culture Map, and it's all about the cultural differences and selling into those different cultures. So the analogies that I use with different people at different times will differ. And it's interesting, like I have a lot of listeners from outside Scotland now in the podcast. I think it was played in 119 countries last year. So I do have to be sensitive that if you and I started having jokes about Glasgow culture or Edinburgh culture or UK culture, some people will get a bit lost. So I do try and be like country agnostic at that point in time, while of course recognizing that where I come from.
Yeah. So you've had obviously 340 episodes and a bunch of guests on the podcast, and a lot of them have been salespeople. Has there been any particular guest you've had on from a sales perspective that you've really took a lot from? I mean, I know it wasn't necessarily sales, but I listened to the one you had a few weeks ago, Rob Begg. I know it wasn't sales, but it was very, when I listened to that, I was thinking, you had the Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
Really interesting because the mind...
So Rob studied with Bob Proctor, who's very much from the same sort of school as Joe Dispenza, yeah.
Because Joe Dispenza, if I remember his story correctly, he was in a motorcycle accident, crippled, and everyone said, you're never going to walk again, crippled, and he just told himself every single day for God knows how long, I'm going to walk again, and
lo and behold,
done it. And that happens in people with cancers and all sorts of stuff. And
it's interesting you bring up Rob Begg. So yes, while he's not necessarily a salesman, what he teaches about non-duality and identity and how you see yourself, and then how that leads into your behaviors, your actions, your habits and routines is very, very important. And some of the salespeople that I've worked with, or people in terms of as employees, they have a particular ceiling of what they think they can deliver.
Yeah.
So when I went into that furniture business, the CEO had worked with me when I was like 21, 22, 23 in insurance, and knew I was like hungry and knew I was a guy to get the doors open and get things moving for that division of the business. He was like, when you're here, you're going to be able to deliver over £1 million in revenue. So that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Colin's going to deliver £1 million in revenue annually. And I was like, okay, cool, that can happen. In the same way, if somebody's target is 50 grand a month in whatever sector they're selling in, when they hit that, sometimes they're like, big sigh of relief, I can do that. Or if they're on 45 on the last day of the month, they probably know, I've closed 50 before. They'll close a 5 grand deal, they'll find it out of nowhere. And Rob was illustrating that over and over and over and over again. Using the fitness example, many people are like, I never stick to my New Year's resolutions. I'll never get up for the gym when I'm tired. I always fuck it when I'm hungover and have a Mackey's.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That will become your reality because it's the story you're telling yourself with. So I think in terms of lessons from somebody like Rob, it's rewiring what you think you're capable of. And he talks about having limitless potential, having awareness of what's possible. If we can shift our awareness towards that. And again, if I think about my identity when I moved to that business, I was like, I'm going to be a 7-figure sales guy, delivers 7 figures of revenue, who earns 6 figures in commission.
Yep.
And lo and behold, I acted like that guy. I didn't fake it till I make it. I was it till I became it. And there's a difference.
Yes.
I continually showed up, acted like that guy. Even if I think about the podcast, before I was a top 1% podcaster, a top 5% podcaster on Spotify, I acted like a top podcaster. I reached out to top guests. I booked them in. I researched them. I asked good questions. I communicated clearly. I brought my ideas to the table. I have a clips editor that produces 3 promotional clips. I have a thumbnail editor that produces a quality thumbnail. I record in studios like this one here at Podster in Dubai that are good quality. So I'm acting like a top podcaster before the numbers reflected I was a top podcaster.
Before the sponsors came and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And lo and behold, we're sitting here in 2025 and it's a great fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I acted like before I came in. So before I did, I think the first year that I was at a business of like 300 and something odd grand, I knew the next year I'm going to get close to that million. And then I did think I had 800 and something. And then I did 1.1 the year after that and 1.7 because I believed it before it was going to happen. Yeah. And I just acted like a guy over and over and over again.
It's that growth mindset. You're always reaching more. As we begin to wrap up, the last thing I wanted to kind of really ask you, Colin, is people that are listening to this that need some support with sales. I know you can help these people. What's the reason they should think about improving their sales? And the reason I'm asking that is the first time we're talking about at the beginning of the pod was all about how the UK is fucked and all the rest of it and everything's doom and gloom, blah, blah. But sales can be a way out of that. Is that the reason that you would kind of contextualize that's why you need to improve your sales because it's your way out?
Yeah, sales is the lifeblood of any business. So on my show, you spoke about 3 issues a company commonly has that you're looking at. It's either distressed or not quite where it wants to be. One of them was cash flow, can be solved by making more sales. Number 2 was sales and the actual process itself. And number 3 was lead generation, which links into sales. Yep. So if we can fix that area of your business or that area of your career or whatever you're working on, then there is so much that sits on the other side of that. Encouragingly enough, sounds a bit depressing, most sales processes are absolutely shit. Yep. So we have loads of headroom to grow into. So if we can do even the 1%, if we can do the 1%ers, it's going to add up massively over time. So yes, the UK is in a pretty horrible terminal managed decline, but we can improve within that. I've improved within that. Many people listening to this will be sat in the UK, and I've had guests like in the last run, Scottish guests. So Taylor McDonald, fantastic property business growing in the UK, sales coaching client of mine. John Cox works in property. Cox & Co just sold to Casa. He bought back in. The business is doing great. They have good sales processes. Mm-hmm. They've worked on it. They've optimized it. They've improved on it. You can have agency over that. It's one of the numerous things that we can control. There's not enough of those things, unfortunately, at this moment in time, but it is one thing. So if you work with me, that is something that we can work on, we can focus on, and it can be a silver lining in the cloud that is the UK just now. Yeah. Okay. On that note, mate, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks for coming on the show. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do so? LinkedIn is Colin T. Campbell. Instagram is call.cambro. And my email address, if you want to talk sales coaching, is colin@callcambro.com. Thanks very much for having me, Stephen. Awesome. Thanks, mate. Thanks for listening to the Built Different podcast. If you found this valuable and you want more, head over to stephenpettigrew.co.uk. You'll find my mentorship options, AI systems, acquisition frameworks, and all the tools that will help you grow, fix, or buy a business. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with someone who'll get value from it. It helps the show reach more people just like you. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.